Everybody, welcome along. We are going live again today. There were no technical issues yesterday, so we'll keep doing these updates live until the technology falls over and scares me off for another month or so. Got 4 football stories to chat about today, and then if there's people in the live chat with questions, we'll do a little bit of back and forth at the end. So we've got the Premier League club's first load of results back, and then their training, which started yesterday. We've got Troy Deeney and his comments. We've got Hull City in the Championship, and then this morning the legal threats towards the FFP teams in the Championship as well. So plenty to get our teeth into. First of all, it was the Premier League clubs results yesterday that I wanted to talk about. So 19 Premier League clubs yesterday published their results. It was Norwich who were a day behind. I don't know why that is, so I assume we get theirs at some point today. As we suspected, there would be a few positive cases. Remember, it was 10 in Germany, wasn't it? Although I'm guessing that's for Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2 as well, because that's one organisation. I hadn't thought about that actually. We got back 6 positive tests. So that's 0.8% of the people tested. So the first human interest thing is good. That is a low number. Details were 3 were at Watford, so 3 at one club, 1 player and 2 staff there at Watford. 1 was named. We know it was Burnley assistant Ian Wone, he of the excellent 90s left foot free kick deliveries. We don't know where the other 2 were. Obviously, again, the human interest side, we hope they're okay. And you would assume that these people are carrying the virus without symptoms. If, we've all been told if you're coughing or your sense of smell goes, or, you have a fever, that you need to stay home. So we're assuming these people weren't going in to work and getting the test with the symptoms. So that's a potluck guess that they're asymptomatic, these guys. And so what that does mean, though, is a simple bit of maths says, without knowing whether the other 2, let's assume the other 2 were from separate clubs, 1 per club, and we can discount Norwich because they haven't given their results back. What that does mean is that 15 Premier League teams, as of yesterday, and we know this is changing, have a clean bill of health, no one carrying the virus, to go ahead and do their non-contact phase 1 training. So that can only be good moving forward. We've now got to keep our fingers crossed and there is a responsibility now, and there's a responsibility to everybody in the UK to stay alert, as the government buzzline says. And if people in players' households and players now stay alert and follow the guidelines, then in theory, and I know that this virus doesn't work in theory, we won't have an outbreak. So fingers crossed with all of that. My reaction, as I said, is it's a nice positive step to have them back, to have concrete numbers as well. There's been so much guessing games throughout all of this, but to have that 0.8% number is good. And then you can track that, can't you? Is that going up? Is that going down? How badly is that going up? Is it posing a big problem? And again, it gives us a number, to track for the Championship when they start, hopefully, as they're planning to, testing and coming back. Get your thoughts in on those numbers. Right, okay, let's have fun with this one in the comments, as I always say, because we're going to talk about Troy Deeney's comments yesterday. Very outspoken, the Watford captain. I applaud anybody who, in a civilised way, encourages debate. So I do applaud Deeney for speaking out, and I'll reiterate this again at the end. Whether he turns out to be right or turns out to be wrong, it's always important for people to come out and debate from different angles. So that's good. Let's go through his comments and we'll go through them bit by bit. So Deeney said it only takes one person to get infected within the group, and I don't want to be bringing that home. Obviously, you can't disagree with that. Yeah, if someone gets into the Watford training ground and passes on the virus, then yes, then there's a risk, isn't there? We get that. Obviously, it's phase 1 of training. We've seen people in masks. We've seen people still social distancing. Perhaps there might be a failure of the protocols if that happened, or again, a failure of someone who goes home to observe the guidelines and stay alert. That wouldn't be Troy Deeney's fault if he then went and took it home to his 5-month-old child. So look, we know the risks, and obviously you can't argue with the statement that there is a risk. So that would be my response. I would say there's a chance of anyone getting it anywhere where there's people, isn't there? So that would be the kind of black and white, no grey areas answer to that. Deeney goes on to say, Colm says, glad he's standing up for his beliefs. Yeah, we can all get behind that, can't we? He goes on to say, my son is only 5 months old. He's had breathing difficulties, so I don't want to come home and put him in danger. Of course, everybody understands shielding somebody they live with. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. My missus has the purple inhaler. She doesn't have to use it all the time, but it is there. And by the science, that puts her in extremely vulnerable. So I have exactly the same position as Troy Deeney has. I'm going to be asked to go back to work on June the 1st, and I have a decision to make, don't I? So I can totally empathise with that position. What I will say is, in Troy Deeney's case and in my case, that's a problem that is specific to me. It's not to do with my work, and it's not a football problem. It's my personal situation. So we know that people like myself and Troy Deeney have 3 choices. You can go to work and take the risk and not shield your person at home. You can go to work and then quarantine. Is that feasible? Maybe more feasible for Troy Deeney in his situation than it is with me in my situation. But again, it's freedom of choice, isn't it? And you have the choice to not go to work and protect the person you're shielding by doing that. I do believe in personal freedom of choice, but by the same token, I don't believe that my employee should stop everybody going back to work because I need to shield someone at home. That would be crazy if they had to do that. No workplace in England would be able to open up under those things. So it's very, very difficult. I believe in freedom of choice. I'm sure you can imagine the conversation with my boss, and it was, without revealing too much, I'm sure you understand what happens with my wages if I do take my freedom of choice to not go in. Am I independently financially wealthy enough to ride out a period of not going in? Possibly for a few weeks, but not indefinitely. I have expenses. I'm sure Troy Deeney has expenses as well. So it's very, very difficult. I can totally empathise with Deeney's position, but I can also empathise with the Premier League's position that they can't judge everything on people having to do individual shielding at home. And I empathise with an employer's position as well. It's very, very hard. So I think in the type of society, a free society that we live in, all we can ask for is, like the comments have said, for people to speak out and for freedom of choice to be respected. I'm sure, however, we'll get people crying foul if the captain and possibly the best player in Watford, or one of the best players, isn't, say, fit because he exercised his freedom of choice. I don't know whether this is a crass analogy, but you'll often find players when their wives go into labour, they won't go and play their game because they have a personal situation where they deem it more important. Obviously, it's not life or death like shielding a 5-month-old baby, but that's the only thing I can say. And normally the thing is that that's more important than your football. You don't have to come into work until your partner has given birth or what have you. So that's the best analogy I can come up with, probably not a good one. But there you go. Deeney goes on, I can't get a haircut until mid-July, but I can go and get in a box with 19 people and go and jump for a header and nobody could answer the questions. Not because they didn't want to, just because they didn't know the information. No, I'm not entirely behind that equivalence. Anybody can make equivalences to other jobs and things, and football is very, very unique. And again, of course, they can't answer the questions. We don't know where the R number will be and the plans for hair salons to open on July the 4th. We have got no crystal ball there. Again, I keep saying this, I'm not being facetious. I'm sure if you went and straw polled the hairdressers around England and offered them the infrastructure that Premier League football will have to restart and keep them safe, I'm sure they'd be quite happy to take that infrastructure though. So I think we've got to be a bit careful with comparing the safety of a hairdresser with their infrastructure and a Premier League footballer, but I kind of take his point. Here's an interesting one though. Deeney said for Black, Asian and mixed ethnicities, they're 4 times more likely to get the illness, they're twice as likely to have long-lasting illnesses. Is there anything extra additional screening, heart stuff, to see if people have got problems with that? No. Okay, well, I feel that should be addressed. Yes, of course. Look, in all of this, any position where we can analyse who's more vulnerable and protect them is really, really important. Again, this I don't want to use the term black and white to talk about BAME, but it's not completely black and white. There are many factors. I've been on the Bupa website before doing this, and Bupa do quote that your ethnicity does have an impact in the underlying health issues that can make COVID worse, respiratory things. You can go and check that out online. So hopefully the club doctors and the Premier League will have enough science to at least address this and put BAME athletes at mind. Just to be balanced, I have heard the other argument that the figures on BAME in a wider sense of the country are more to do with socio-economic factors. For example, if you're using the whole figure, it might be a bit skewed because then you're comparing potentially an elite athlete with no underlying issues and a very good socio-economic standing in the sort of financial hierarchy with someone living in London who let's just say, does not have the same sort of socio-economic and health factors as a Premier League football. You'd think they would be absolutely poles apart. So it's really difficult because the ideal figure would be what is the influence on Premier League footballers of BAME origin. But obviously, we've heard the term lab rats. We can't get that figure until they go back, and you wouldn't want them to be put at risk. Very, very difficult. I can see both arguments. I can see the Bupa side, and if there is a risk, then let's talk and let's put things in process. But I can also see the argument that I've heard made that BAME Premier League footballers aren't in the same position and category as the general BAME population. Therefore, to use the statistic for every group is going to have a different likelihood, aren't they? And I'm trying to tread around a difficult issue, but hopefully you'll take my points on that. In short, as I said at the top, it is really good for someone to raise concerns and stand behind their beliefs. I'd like to think I would do the same, and I'd like to think if I was right, I would then be applauded. And I would like to think if I was wrong, I would still be applauded because you'd raised the concerns and you'd possibly made it safer and you'd caused the debate to happen. So I do applaud Troy Deeney, and I do respect his freedom of choice to not go into work. I'd like to think everyone in the country had equal freedom of choice to do so. Sadly, we all know that not everybody is equal and life is not fair, and good people do bad things and bad people do good things, and it's very, very nuanced. And yes, people might have freedom of choice, but everyone's in a different situation and they might not be able to utilise the freedom of choice in the same way that a Premier League footballer can. And again, I'm not arguing that wealthy people are immune to it. They're not. What I'm saying is that freedom of choice is all well and good until you can't afford to utilise it. So it's very, very difficult, isn't it? Phew, right. Hopefully I treaded around that nice and carefully and didn't upset anybody. I'm sure I will have, but I hope you can see from the heart that I've tried to do that in a balanced and kind way, looking at all the outcomes. Get your thoughts in on the BAME issue. Moving on, let's talk about Hull City, who apparently have written to Rick Parry and the EFL, raising serious concerns about the championship returning. Mr. Alam, of the fabled Alam family at Hull, claimed his club will make losses of 1.2 million, and he revealed he'll also be voting against the kind of blanket policy to be able to extend contracts. Indy Three Stripes says Hull are in awful form and doing terrible. I wonder why they wrote that. His words, not mine, but I will talk about Hull's form in a minute. The Telegraph also revealed it was John Percy who's well connected. 3 or 4 other clubs will also oppose the restart. Remember, we are 24 clubs, so you're looking at 16, no you're not, I'm being thick, you're looking at 13 for a majority there on the vote. Hull are also upset. They announced in a statement later in the day about the leak of this information. Can you imagine this month some information being leaked? Yeah, because that hasn't happened every single hour of every day. But hey, if Hull didn't leak it, they didn't leak it, and I can kind of understand. But hey, their point is their point, whether it's leaked or not. Just for a bit of context, based on what the commenter just said there, Indy Three Stripes. So, and this is not me being naughty, because self-interest is relevant here. We've discussed it in the League One example, that what's right for Andy Holt at Accrington is to stop playing. What's right for Marcus Evans and Darren McAntony at Ipswich is to keep playing. And we can't argue that one person's self-interest outweighs the other. Everyone wants to do their best for their club. That said, we all know the Hull story this season, don't we? Parachute payments are now gone from Hull, so that financial advantage has vaporised. We know how brilliant Jared Bowen and Kamil Grzycki were, and we know that Hull probably took a view at the end of January that they had a fair amount of points. I think it's 39 at the end of January, and that they would cash in on Bowen. That may still turn out to be a good decision if players' values plummet, because he would have been the last big sale out of the championship. That said, here's what happened to their form after Bowen and Grzycki left. They were in 14th. 8 games later, they've drawn 2 and lost 6. 2 points in 8 games. They're now 21st, 1 place above relegation, 2 points above relegation. And I just want to throw in a little points per game grenade here. Hull's points per game pre-February the 1st, 1.34. Post-February the 1st, smaller sample size accepted, 0.25. So you can see in this context, a null and void would help Hull. Also, a points per game would help Hull, because 6 times higher their points per game selling Bowen to afterwards, and obviously they would have to play those remaining games without Bowen. So another interesting little notch, if you want to quote that in your points per game argument, that Hull would arguably get in by points per game 6 times more than they have been getting without their star player after he'd been sold. There we go. Get your thoughts in on Hull. I've just presented statistics there. In fact, I'm not offering an opinion, and I am of the position that self-interest is okay. Everyone needs to do the best for their club. Animations asked about Gab Sutton. Talked with Gab for an hour. It is in YouTube and ready to press go, so I'll put it out later this afternoon after this video has cleared. But get your thoughts in the comments on Hull. Finally, if you subscribe to The Athletic, you'll have been woken by an article this morning talking about FFP, which has kind of gone to sleep a little bit. Remember, Sheffield Wednesday and Derby are being investigated. They may or may not be charged. They've been charged. They may or may not be found guilty. Always seem to upset Sheffield Wednesday and Derby fans by talking about that. Birmingham issue is rumbling on. Apparently the EFL, Birmingham's appeal was successful, and the EFL have now gone against, so they're on appeal number 2 against the verdict, clearing them. Barnsley co-owner Paul Conway has spoken out, saying that they will sue the EFL if the penalties aren't applied to teams that fall foul of FFP this season. So did you hear that correctly? I'm not saying anyone's guilty. I'm saying that the Barnsley owner or co-owner, Mr. Conway, has said that if people are found guilty, that they need to have their punishment against their points this season. And we know that is an issue for particularly Sheffield Wednesday, who slipped down the table. I haven't done the maths actually. It was a 12-point penalty or more. I think that puts them either very close or into the relegation. Again, fact check me on that. Check the numbers on that. So I should have done that before the video. Mr. Conway says, if we've been wronged as a result of the league not following its own rules, then it stands to reason that we go against the league and its TV money and ask them to pay us the difference in revenue. So essentially what Barnsley are arguing is that if they are relegated and an FFP team gets away with it, that they'll want the difference in revenues, which would probably be about 7 million quid knowing the TV money figures, to be paid to them while they're in League One next season, because they feel, well, that they shouldn't be there and they want the shortfall made up. Seems rather hard to disagree with that. It does seem harsh that teams would get FFP on top, but we have to be dispassionate about this and say that these issues were here before COVID. Derby and Sheffield Wednesday got charged. These are pre-COVID penalties that would be applied. I don't want to get into whether you think Derby Stadium is overvalued or whether you think Chansiri is guilty or not guilty. Tom, thank you. 12-point deduction will put Sheffield Wednesday 22nd. There you go, into the relegation zone. Thank you, Tom, in the comments. So it is an issue. The rules say that you should be penalised in that year. So by the rule book, Mr. Conway's right, and whatever happens should happen. And I hate to say, I know the EFL have had a lot on their plate, but the lawyers have had plenty of time to look at this. And remember, Birmingham were found guilty and investigated way back early in last season, weren't they? And then it wasn't until the last international break that points deduction came down. So we shall see. Nick says in the comment, deduction should start next season. So there you go. We get different opinions wherever we go. Let me know what you think. Right, hopefully we've covered all of those issues. If there's anyone in the comments got any questions, I'll stay on and do a couple. I'll do my normal plugs now while they hopefully come in. Twitter at Benjamin Bloom, YouTube, subscribe, ring the bell. As I say, I have a hard decision about work to make on June the 1st, but in the meantime, I'll try and get on here and we'll do these as live streams. The last couple of days has been fun, and there just seems to be a new story or 3 or 4 every day to be able to do this. So hit subscribe, ring the bell if you're a new subscriber. Prior to COVID, this was a Championship channel exclusively, like everybody, well, and some Ipswich and League One concerning Ipswich basically, but like everyone, I have had to adapt. So I've gone a little bit broader and we've gone into the news stories, and I hope people acknowledge that I've had to adapt. And my channel was based on, all started with match reviews. I'm sure many of subscribers have seen me straight out of a game, straight into the car where we're hot and talk about the match. I'm going to have to change going forward, so perhaps the output might look a bit different. James says, any plans to do a Championship podcast? There'll be one, as a one-off, there's one with Gav Sutton going up this afternoon. It's not pure Championship. I don't know. We'll see how numbers go and how things transpire. Obviously, if I did this full-time, which depends on subscribers and revenues coming in to help me out, I would love to do I'd love to do all sorts of different podcasts, you know, each day, but it's just having the time to be able to do this and paying my bills in the meantime. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Good numbers in the live streams. Can't see many questions coming in, so I will bid everybody farewell and say to those people watching on delay, get your comments in. Keeping those numbers down, 0.8% positive tests. Troy Deeney, a whole different load of things there. What I do stand behind again, regardless of what you think of Troy Deeney's comments, be nice about them. And surely we all agree, living in England in 2020, freedom of choice, freedom of speech is important, and it's important for people to put their views go. Nick asked, when do I think fans will go back in? God, minimum 2021, isn't it? They might even just agree. It might just be easier to agree to do the whole of next season behind closed doors. Whether people like that or not, it's just vital in keeping things going. Else, we don't know how many clubs we're going to be going back to. The other two stories we did were Hull City and the FFP teams. Barnsley and presumably other clubs will back them in this one. Well, every other club that isn't being charged for FFP will back them, I guess, with those sanctions being dropped this season and not next. That could be an absolute mess next season, couldn't it? Behind closed doors, transfer market dead, clubs broke, and 2 or 3 starting with minus 12 points. What a basket case, even more than this one. Right, I'll echo Colin's statements in the comment there. Stay safe, everybody. Let's see what happens in the news today, and check out later on. We'll get the interview or the conversation, which is an informal chit chat with Gab Sutton of Football Lab. So that'll cover EFL, Championship League 1, League 2, etc. Thank you everybody for watching. It's a beautiful day. If you're in work, thank you and well done for being able to safely keep things going and give some little prick to the economy. If you're out of work, I hope you're okay for money and I hope you're safe. And if you're possibly going back on June the 1st and you're worried about it, you have everybody's empathy about that, and we'd exercise the Troy Deeney issue of everybody hopefully has got the freedom of choice and hopefully has got some ability to exercise that, but I know everybody's situation is different. So anyway, too much politics today, but hey, it is what it is, isn't it? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next live stream hopefully, and check out later today conversation with Gab Sutton. Over and out. See you soon.